Flag up here. Okay, Mike Johnson, take it away.
Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Introduction of new guests or members. I think aside from the obvious guests who will introduce in a minute, I don't see anyone else that's new.
We all know each other, but
Yeah.
Beth, if you wanted to unmute yourself and take a second to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Beth Burks. I'm the Executive Director of Hcog, and that's the Humboldt County Association of Governments. I have been in this position since the start of the year. Basically, came in on, I think January 2nd was my first day, somewhere around there. And before that, I was a local consultant, a land use planner. And before that, I worked for the county as a planner for 8 years. So I've been a longtime Humboldt County resident. I'm an HSU grad. And I do consider my hometown is Fortuna. I live on the outskirts of town, not in the city limits, but we consider that our home base. So very delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, happy to have you.
Renee.
Yes,
Okay.
okay.
There's a whole list here, I see.
Woo, tuck in, people. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this Wednesday is the second of 2 public meetings about the proposed Riverfront Park. Wednesday's meeting will be from 5:30 to 7 at the River Lodge. If you missed the first meeting, come on down to this one. It's, show up anytime. You put stickers on things that you like. It's really low key. It's a lot of fun. Come on down. This Thursday and Friday is the Redwood Coast Region Economic Development Summit. Tickets are still on sale. I believe they are mailing out the swag bags or have mailed them out already. So you may have to go get your swag bag if you buy your tickets this late in the game, but you can still attend. Also on Thursday is our multi-chamber virtual mixer hosted by Co-Central Credit Union from 5:30 to 7. This will be on a platform called Remo. It has tables where you can network and bounce around, so that it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to hear from Jim Sessa, the member service branch managers, and we're going to get to meet the artists for their 2022 calendar and see some of the photos. So that's always exciting. This Friday kicks off 2 weekends of Halloween fun at the Screamatorium on Main Street. Adult and kids tickets are on sale. If you are not up for the Screams, you can go on Halloween Day from 11 to 6. They're going to have a less scary, less gory, more fun trick-or-treating, finding things kind of a day for people that, don't want to have their pants scared off. So go ahead and go on that day. Trunk or Treat is next Friday, October 29th from 3 to 5. Bring the kids downtown for some trick-or-treating. Next Saturday, the 30th, from 4 to 6, folks can come see the U.S. Capitol Christmas tree named Sugar Bear at the River Lodge Conference Center. The 84-foot tree will be parked by the overlook on Riverwalk Drive with additional activities and booths in the parking lot. Everyone is invited to attend. All activities are free. If you bring $5 worth of non-perishable food for the Santa Sleigh program, you'll get a $5 gift card to a local business, courtesy of Cornerstone Realty, as a thank you. So thank you, Cornerstone, for sponsoring that. We'll also be handing out take-home decoration kits, ornament making kits for kids to make ornaments for their own tree. Those are courtesy of Alan Baird and the Fortuna Post Office. We're still working out a few more details, hopefully getting a special allowance for a food truck potentially through our city council. So stay tuned for that. And then some other things, we're just trying to get the final details worked out. So you can get up-to-date information on our Facebook event page or at fortunachamber.com/Capitol Tree. And then on Halloween, you can bring the young ones to Roner Park for their Spookathon. That's their first ever, I believe. That is from 3 to 5. They're going to have carnival games, a spook tunnel, goodie bags. You can take a walk around the loop and some other things. So the games are geared for 10 and under, but all ages are welcome. So come on down for that. And then finally, I think that's it, unless I skipped anything. Next week, our special guest will be Billy Higgins. He's the new artistic producing director for the Ferndale Repertory Theater. And with that, I'll take a breath and send it back to Bailey. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements from any of our guests? Yeah, Ray. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
Okay, yeah. Today is the kickoff of the Great Pumpkin Sale over at Ray's Market. We've got a trailer set up there. You can stop by, bring the kids, buy a pumpkin, and all the proceeds go to the Big Brothers Big Sisters, support the community. Once again, there's no set price, just to make a donation, whatever you can afford. We sure like to accommodate you. So come on by.
Great,
It'll
thank
be-
you.
oh, sorry, it'll be going on till I think the 30th, and it'll be there every day, weather permitting, with the exception of Sundays. Sundays we take off.
Thank you. Anybody else? Melissa, got anything for us today?
No, just that a bunch of cheerleaders have COVID, so wear your mask.
No
So
fun.
it's out there in full force. So just be
Yeah.
careful, and that's it.
Jeremy's prepared.
Yeah, good job, Jeremy. Way to be.
Yeah. Anyone else before we let Beth take over? Cool. Well, Beth, it's all you now.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping the chat is enabled because we will also want to use the chat. So let's see.
Everybody get your chat open.
Okay.
And then there'll be a portion where you can yell out your answers.
Okay, so it looks like since I'm a co-host that my screen sharing options are a little different. So it's asking me if I
Well,
can let.
do you want me to make you a host?
No, I think I just don't want to be a host at all, actually. I want to be a participant.
But you need to be to share your screen.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
One participant, multiple.
What you did before.
It's different now. My choices at the bottom are different. Let's see here. There's got to be more options. Okay.
I don't think there's a way that I can.
Here we go. I think I have it now.
Okay.
I can invite. Okay, now we're on track. All right, is everyone seeing just the screen with the PowerPoint, not the notes page?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's get started. So this is meant to, you feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. Once I start sharing my screen, I'm not able to see all the faces. So just speak up. I don't mind. I can be flexible. So I already introduced myself, Beth Burks, Executive Director with Hcog. And I wanted to start with some polling questions. And I was going to do this with Mentimeter, but it sounds like that might be more than we bargained for in terms of how we're working. So we're just going to do this with in the chat, if we can, and see how many people, or you can do just raise of hands, how many people have actually heard of Hcog? Do we have okay, this is good. So I've done this presentation a few times, and maybe we can thank Mike for this. But I will say, when I do this presentation normally, people have not heard of Hcog, or just a couple people have. So we, we'll talk more about what Hcog is, but I'm pleased to see that so many of you have heard of our organization. And then next question is, what type of business are you in? So I just want to learn a little bit more about all of you. Yeah, if you want to just, with such a small group, why don't we just say it out loud? People want to kind of help me know where they're coming from.
Well, yeah, Jeremy put in, he's with real estate.
Okay.
Bailey as well.
Okay.
Greatest business of all. I'm retired.
Excellent.
Hi, this is Erin, State Government.
Okay.
Hi, this is Denise McLean Foundation.
Nice.
Bob, I'm a banker, Redwood Capital Bank.
Okay. Do we get everybody?
Melissa's in the media, and Becky is also retired, but she's a superstar.
I like that designation, superstar designation. I'm gonna go for
Okay.
that one. Okay, so do you think that, and being retired also counts, do you think transportation affects your business? I can do show of hands. Yeah. Yeah, I would think so. And if you're not convinced that it does, you know, maybe through the presentation, you'll see that it really does affect everything we do. And then just, this was kind of a fun one. What makes Fortuna great? First thing that comes to mind.
Community.
Small town feel.
Location.
All right. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of do that. It helped me kind of know where we're coming from a little bit, and also to just think about, you know, kind of get in this frame of mind of how broad of a topic transportation and our transportation infrastructure really is, because it does really touch all of the aspects of our lives. So I'm going to just, this is really a presentation meant to be a broad overview, and it will, you know, be an introduction to HCAOG on kind of the broadest terms. And we can, you know, if there's time, we can talk more about details if you have specific questions. And if those come up, we'll make Mike answer those. So he'll answer the hard questions, and we'll talk broadly. So HCAOG is the Regional Transportation Planning Agency for Humboldt County. And we are a joint powers authority with a board that's made up of each of the cities and the County of Humboldt. So for Fortuna, Mike Johnson is actually our board chair, and he represents Fortuna on our board. We also have a couple committees that advise the HCAOG board. And the first of those is the Technical Advisory Committee. And this is made up primarily of public works directors or their designees from each of the cities and the county. And then also on the Technical Advisory Committee, we have several representatives from Native American tribes locally. And that's actually very unique to HCAOG that we have these voting members on our Technical Advisory Committee. It's something we're really proud of, and I think really helps make sure that our projects have as broad of a focus as they should. The other committee we have is a Social Service Advisory Council, and that primarily focuses on public transit, and they advise regarding all things transit related. There's representatives from the transit agencies, and there's also representatives from the community that are transit dependent users. So some, you know, disability rights advocates, those kinds of folks are on that committee as well. And we are really focused on region-wide planning issues related to transportation. So we're not necessarily like, don't think of HCAOG and think of potholes and what's going to happen about the potholes in front of your house. Like, we're not really those people. But if there's a big picture transportation project that needs to go forward, that's really regionally important. So one of the ones that HCAOG's been working on for years and years, for example, is the Eureka Arcata Safety Corridor project and getting that undercrossing there. And that's for the Bay Trail, and has put funds towards the Bay Trail. So those kind of bigger regional projects, and a lot of advocacy towards active transportation. So that maybe is a good way to think about just kind of the bigger picture. So why should you care about HCAOG? And I would say, kind of like we were talking about, you know, does transportation affect your business? I would say our region's transportation infrastructure affects all of us. It affects our lives every day. Every single person that lives here will interact with our transportation infrastructure. Every person who visits here, and all the goods and services that come in and out to us will be influenced by our transportation infrastructure. So additionally, in terms of dollars, it's our community's biggest investment. It's our biggest infrastructure investment. So really a lot at stake there, and a lot to you know, be concerned about. And we'll learn more about all the different ways that transportation influences our community in a little bit. So if you care about, and this is going to just pop up some things. The first one is actually a Redwood Way picture, pedestrian crossings, economic development. If you care about jobs, if you care about housing, if you care about trails, if you care about the rising seas and climate change, or all kinds of multimodal access and how we get around. If you care about that stuff, you should care about HCAOG, because we work on projects and programs that kind of touch on all of this and bring it all together. So what do we actually do? Like, what do I spend my days doing? Well, our main purpose is to provide a forum to plan and discuss and study transportation issues at the regional level. And we prepare a lot of plans. So some examples we do every year, there's a regional unmet transit needs plan where we survey the whole community and find out what they would like to see in terms of transit resources. We have a safe routes to school prioritization tool that helps figure out which schools might be ready to take on, get their sidewalks in place, which ones are kind of scoring high and would be ready to receive funding for that. We are currently working on a pavement management plan, and that's where a consultant comes through and actually walks or drives every mile of pavement that we have here and gives a report to all the entities so that our jurisdictions can decide what to do with their limiting funding and how to best correct their transportation infrastructure. We recently adopted a mobility on demand plan that's looking at really kind of more nimble options for public transit that aren't really the traditional fixed route system, but how could we encourage transit use with things that look a little more like Uber or Lyft in addition to the traditional fixed route bus systems. We just finished a bike map application that's online where you can go online and see all the bike routes throughout Humboldt County and what classification they are. And we have them kind of labeled about like if you're a confident bike rider versus like a novice and kind of which routes you might feel most comfortable on. And that covers the bike routes to the cities, connecting through the counties. So those are the kinds of things that we work on a regular basis. Our most wide-reaching plan is our regional transportation plan. And that's something we're doing right now. We're updating our regional transportation plan. So we're going to spend some time today talking about that and what we're doing with that plan. So in general, what do we do with all this planning? So it's really fun. I'm a planner, so I like to sit at my desk and, work with people and work on these plans. But really the outcome is the important part of these plans, having these building blocks. And what it does is it helps us know what we should be advocating for at the local, regional, and state levels and beyond. And especially being a rural county, we kind of use this to work collectively with other rural counties throughout California to really advocate for policies statewide that help bring money to the rural areas and get our projects prioritized, because it's really easy to get lost in the sea of urban areas in California and see all the money. There's a lot of people there, they have a lot of needs too, but mile for mile and per capita, our rural areas have a whole lot of transportation infrastructure we need to look out after. And it's very important for all of California that we keep our roads open. So just think about last chance grade or something like that. It's not just us that is affected, our local folks that are affected when something like that closes down. It's really a commerce route and that kind of thing. So even though we might be rural and our population doesn't necessarily demand as much attention, if you're just looking at it from that lens, certainly we have a critical role to play in maintaining California's infrastructure. We also do a lot to collaborate with our member agencies, helping them seek grant funding for projects that are prioritized through our different plans, and working closely with Caltrans as well. They have a lot of funding that we can access, and also they help actually fund Hcog. So we work really closely with Caltrans. As I mentioned, we're really involved with the transit agencies and work with them as well to get projects funded and make sure that they're meeting certain things that flow through Hcog, like performance audits and things like that. We make sure that those are all kept up so they can keep their funding going. So in Fortuna specifically, Fortuna does have the Fortuna transit system serving seniors and disabled folks. And so that program does receive money that flows through Hcog. So there's that. There's also, we have the responsibility to determine the regional distribution of state transportation improvement dollars. So this year for the 2022, it's called the STIP, we have over $5 million that we are programming over a 5-year period. And we'll talk more about that because the technical advisory committee has just recommended a pretty good amount coming to a Fortuna project. So as the presentation goes on, we'll talk more about that STIP funding. We also have a pot of money that we specifically set aside for bicycle and pedestrian projects. And Fortuna has been the recipient of that funding as well. And we can talk more about that project. So as I mentioned, our regional transportation plan is our broadest plan. And if you are familiar with the City of Fortuna's general plan or the county's general plan, this really holds sort of that same level of focus but specific to regional transportation. So it's kind of our guiding document. It's meant to be a 20-year look ahead, so a 20-year planning horizon, but we are required to update it every 4 years. So we are in the process of doing that now. The last year I've been here bringing chapters forward about every month to the HCAOG board and committees. And so this month we'll be releasing the full public draft. So there's still time to comment, and we're still working on integrating all the final public comments. And at the end, we still have a survey that's open. So there's a link to that at the end. You guys can get that. We'd love for all of you to take the survey. So for the regional transportation plan, I'm going to read you our goal. It's kind of a mouthful, so I'm just going to read it verbatim. For Humboldt County to have a carbon neutral, multimodal transportation system that is comprehensive, safe, sustainable, and equitable, so that people in the region can travel and move goods safely and efficiently by the modes that best suit the individual or business industry and society at large. So we wanted to be very comprehensive with that overall goal. And I think, it really kind of touches on everything we're working on. So within the regional transportation plan, we kind of have some highlights that are really, get covered and are kind of these big picture items that tie it all together for us. What are we working towards and what are we really addressing? So we talk about climate change. We talk about land use and its relationship to housing and vibrant neighborhoods, and how transportation options related to neighborhoods really increase the livability of those neighborhoods. We talk about transportation equity, safety and health outcomes, and the economic effects of our transportation system. So that's a lot of big picture topics get covered in this plan, and we have goals and policies related to each of these. So a few of these I want to pull out and talk about separately. So equity is the first one, and this is, I think in the last, year or so, I think we're all learning that it's so crucial to recommit ourselves to equity goals and intentions, and to be clear about that. And so we at Hcog are doing that same thing. So we have a whole chapter, Renewing Our Communities, that really describes our equity intentions and what we are trying to accomplish, what we are committing to here at Hcog. So I think, one thing that we're clear about is that transportation and land use practices in the United States have contributed to race-based discrimination and inequity on many levels. So we really want to make sure that we don't continue to support investments that have those disproportionate impacts. And I think one thing to think about, when it comes to equity, just even thinking about our transportation system that favors cars, the single user automobile, which is, what it undeniably does favor, is already sort of disproportionately not benefiting certain people, right? If you are not in that category of people who drives your own vehicle and can afford to, or is able to drive for a variety of reasons, it might be age, it might be disability, already the roads are not benefiting you the same as if you are fortunate enough to drive your own car. And so, our transit system is not nearly as efficient as it is to get around in your own vehicle. So we see these sort of disproportionate impacts, and we wonder, well, what can we do about that? And so, our solution is really looking at these active transportation networks, really prioritizing safety and other features for all users on the road, so that we can make sure that we're not exacerbating those disproportionate impacts as things move forward. There's also a history of highway infrastructure dividing communities. And you think about Fortuna is an example of this, right? I mean, right now we're looking at how do we link both sides of Fortuna? How can I enjoy downtown and then get over to the Riverwalk safely? Right now, there's not a safe way to do it. It doesn't even honestly feel that safe in a vehicle to try to traverse some of those areas. But certainly if you're a pedestrian, that's not an easy thing to decide. I'm walking in downtown and I'd like to go enjoy Riverwalk. And so, those are the kinds of things we want to make sure that everyone gets access. And really it's an equity issue, but everyone benefits, right? Like we're all looking forward to that time when we can safely walk around. It doesn't mean that, I can't afford a car, but it still will benefit me as well. So I think there's a lot to be gained by focusing on equity, and it really does. It is a lift for everyone. So safety and equity really go hand in hand. This is an important thing to be aware of. Humboldt County ranks the worst of all California counties. It is the most dangerous place to be a pedestrian. So it is adjusted for a few factors. This is from the Office of Traffic Safety. It's not just but when they look at all the factors and adjust it for the county, pedestrians, we have the worst safety ranking. When it comes to Fortuna specifically, you see I got them on there as well. You do a little better than the county at large, quite a bit better actually. And the city rankings there are, those are from similarly sized cities comparatively throughout California. So you can see, that Fortuna, we kind of have a middle ranking for total fatal and injury, a little bit better for pedestrians, but just to be aware of, and again, countywide, this is a problem. This is a challenge for us. And we look at Eureka, for example, second out of 97 similarly sized cities. So definitely a lot of work to do in our communities to improve safety. And that really, when we're talking about equity, this goes with that, because from 2005 to 2019, 38% of the pedestrian fatalities in Humboldt County were people of color, and they only make up 21% of our population. So there is this disproportionate, we see that, you kind of hear all these national statistics, and it's playing out in our community as well. So I think, it's wise of us to be aware of this and kind of bring these things to the forefront so we can make decisions accordingly and see better outcomes. So the other thing we work on in this update for our regional transportation plan is addressing climate change. And so what we've got on the screen here are two sets of statistics. The first are the US greenhouse gas emissions. And you'll see transportation is the single largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions at 29%. That's nationwide. And then in 2015, the county did a countywide inventory. So this is Humboldt County specific. And we're actually looking at 53% of our greenhouse gas emissions in Humboldt County coming from transportation. So we have a really big role to play in combating climate change and doing our part. And so we have a lot of policies that go towards this. And one of the first things that's happening with our regional transportation plan and kind of kicked it off, and this was before I joined, so I don't get to take any credit for this whatsoever, but it's wonderful. There was an ad hoc committee that got together and looked at greenhouse gas reduction targets and what could be done within the context of HCAOG planning. And they came up with targets for mode shift from individual vehicles to transit, investments in complete streets, educating about active transportation, people getting out of their cars, working towards Vision Zero, which is really a great program that focuses on really zero deaths, that we will have zero pedestrian fatalities, and then convenient access to destinations. So that's really the land use focus of really looking at where are we doing our planning, where are we putting our new housing, what kind of services are near there, and does it demand that everybody drive long distances, or is it something where people can easily get on transit, or is it easily walkable and they can get to what they need to get to in a reasonable fashion. And again, same along with that, efficiency in locating new housing, and then targets related to zero emission fleets and electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and then just reducing the vehicle miles traveled by car. So there are targets that go with each of these. We have looked at how will we measure these targets, what are the metrics we're going for, and that all appears in our plan this time around, which was never there before. So that's been a great touchstone for us to kind of look at. And again, those concepts of equity and safety, they come back through. So it all kind of comes together, and we can keep our, keep our heads down and know where we're headed. So active transportation, huge focus of our plan. And as we talked about, that's good for a variety of reasons, when but we can't really promote the active transportation without providing safer streets for our community, because we don't want to, right now, do you feel good if you walk down Broadway? No, nobody wants to do that. So I think until we get, the infrastructure caught up, then we can really see the difference in the use. And similar with our transit system, it's very difficult right now. If you're not actually transit dependent, you really have to want it, right? You're going to have to commit to extra travel time. So, really looking at all these different ways to get out of our cars, but really needing that infrastructure to support us in doing so, and realizing that when we get that infrastructure in place, we will see more equitable outcomes. So we adopt a complete streets philosophy, and that is looking at streets that really have room for all users. And that includes cars. We're not getting rid of the cars, but we are looking to make sure that it is safe for pedestrians, that it does have a sense of place. I think that's really important. And I think, when I think of, Fortuna Boulevard or something like that, and all the different activities that can happen there, because we have some room there, that's a luxury that they don't have on Broadway, for example. So, really having that space to make some complete streets is wonderful, and lets us have better planning options. And then, of course, as new infrastructure comes along, and we build new housing in new areas, wanting to make sure that that is done from the get-go with all of these features in mind, and it's not an afterthought, because it's a heck of a lot harder to cram it in later. So I think, that's really kind of the story I want to tell about our regional transportation plan update, in terms of what we're cramming in there and how much, sort of big picture items go into this plan. As I mentioned, on our website, all of the chapters are up there now to review, and the full public draft is going to be released later this month after the board looks at it. Actually, this Thursday, they'll be looking at it. So we'll have a 30-day comment period on the draft, and you can see policies that relate to all of these topics that we have in there. And I'll have a link to that at the end of my presentation. So I also want to, I know you're Fortuna group, so I did want to focus a little bit on the Fortuna projects that are going forward. And so one of the things that happens in the regional transportation plan is that every entity, and the tribes, they each get to propose a list of projects that are important to them that have regional benefits. So not every single project that's going on in Fortuna appears on this list, but if the city feels that it's of regional importance, they do appear on the list. And this is a really important list to be on, because lots of funding that they will, the different entities will want to apply for. The first question is this project in your regional transportation plan? And you want to be able to say yes. And there's a few reasons for that, but largely because we go through a whole public process when we adopt the regional transportation plan. So it's some assurance for whatever the funding agency is, that the public's had the opportunity to vet these projects, that they've reviewed them, that they've been through committees, that they've, they're not just sort of a one-off, oh, I thought of this and it might be great. It's like, no, this is part of our plan and this is important to us. So that's why it's important to be on here. I'm not going to read each of these, but these are, I think there's 8 projects total. And this is what we received essentially from the city, from the Public Works Department, about the most important projects. And Fortuna, just in the time I've been at Hcog, has received funding for projects. Redwood Way, which has just been reconstructed, they received about $60,000 in funding to add to that project. So they already had it, and then they had on their books, and then they had a few project components that they just didn't have the resources to fund completely. And that was some of the bike and pedestrian improvements. And since we have a set aside for that, we were able to contribute about $50,000 to $60,000 for that project, and it allowed them to put, fill in some of the sidewalks and put in bike lanes for part of the stretch. So that was one, kind of smaller project, but a great little additive that Hcog has this funding that's specifically for that purpose, and gave a little boost to the project to make sure those features could be part of it. And probably the more exciting one, so this just is hot off the presses, and this is through the Technical Advisory Committee has recommended that this be included in our 2022 STIP, our state funding that's going forward. And so the board has not approved this yet, but it was recommended. So this is what the Technical Advisory Committee just recommended, is for about $1 million to begin the studies at the Fortuna 12th Street Interchange Modernization Project. district. And this is the northbound. So this, if I don't know how well you can see the figure here, but at Clendenin Cider Works, it's that whole interchange heading north and then heading downtown from 12th Street. I will say I was there this weekend at Clendenin's trying to pull out, and it was scary. Like this area needs some help, and especially this time of year when it gets busy, I think you really realize like that there's just too much going on with the way Newburgh comes in. If you're making a left off of Newburgh, it's not a safe intersection. The city really proposed this project because they thought it would really help address some of the plan, not just the safety issues that are already happening, but the planned future growth, and really create a sense of place. And I think if these were from the presentation to the technical advisory committee, and then this is where I got really excited. So this is a rendering of what it could look like. And so it would be roundabouts, or a roundabout, you could have some art in the center. It would have the bike and pedestrian facilities so that everyone could navigate the area safely. The project itself, what is looking at the estimate at this point, is about a $14 million project to do this work. But what they've been recommended to receive is $1 million in funding. And this is looking at it from a different angle, but that $1 million really covers the very beginning stages of the process. So the planning, looking at getting basically all the permitting in order, doing all the necessary environmental studies. And then they do enough of the design to support that planning effort. So we have to know enough about this project to be able to know what special studies we need and be able to evaluate it, geotechnical evaluations, biological evaluations, the list goes on and on. But just that alone is $1 million. And then once they have that piece, and they have all their approvals, that's kind of the first thing that helps you get more funding, because it's kind of a step-by-step, right? The funding agencies, Caltrans, otherwise, they don't want to take a lot of risk. So we have to do this incrementally. That's why everything takes so long. And so right now we're right at the first stages, but it is really exciting because often that first stage is the hardest piece to fund, because you don't have anything kind of, to show that you've been making a whole lot of progress yet. So this is really important, and we're really grateful that the TAC was able to support this project, and hopeful that the board it traditionally follows the TAC recommendations. And so this one, like I said, is exciting for Fortuna, and I think a real game changer for this area. And you can see in this rendering that's actually a pedestrian. There's a little pedestrian bridge there, so they've actually very preliminary analysis to see that we could expand that bridge with pedestrian facilities and create that crosswalk. And then on the list of their projects not currently funded is the other side of this. So when you get when you get across that bridge, it's not going to be a great place to get spit out as a pedestrian either. And so that will be the next spot, is getting those improvements taken care of. So that I think is, to me, kind of the most exciting Fortuna project on the horizon. So I also wanted to bring up to this group a funding opportunity, and I would encourage anyone that's interested in this to reach out to me after the presentation. This is through Caltrans. It's called Clean California, and they're still working on the guidelines and haven't issued the formal call for projects yet, but we're expecting to see that at the very beginning of December. And since our staff has been heading to workshops and kind of tracking the guideline development, I want to kind of plant the seed for everybody, because I think this funding some of it should definitely make its way here to Humboldt County. And so statewide, there's over $296 million for this program, and it's all about cleaning up roadways and beautifying spaces. So it has litter abatement components, public art is a component, education can be a component of this, and it does not have to be limited to the highway system. So it is transportation related, but the funding can go on local roads as well as the highway system. So, project examples that they've given us is, where we would go in, do litter abatement somewhere, put up public art there, and then have some educational component to do that. That would be an example of what they anticipate to be a competitive project. So Hcog is prepared to help entities access these grants as best as we can. So right now they are open to, when they open, they're anticipating that they're not open to nonprofits or businesses, but it would go through either the city of Fortuna or Hcog would be an eligible applicant. So we are trying to kind of gauge interest for this so that we can figure out, does it make sense to put forward a really comprehensive regional project depending on what people are thinking about, or would it make sense to do, more of a scattering of projects? And we're just trying trying to, position ourselves to be the most competitive, because I think it's really in line with a lot of what we're trying to accomplish here in Humboldt. We have a lot of great public art and, certainly a lot of need to beautify our spaces. So if this is a project that you're interested or have an idea about, we should talk more about it so we could think about how it fits into this bigger picture of like how we're going to, again, position ourselves to be most successful in this program. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation. So I would just really encourage everyone to participate. As I mentioned, our regional transportation plan is being released. The full public release draft is coming out later this month. Actually, probably Friday or Monday, we'll have the start of a 30-day comment period. We have a survey that's still live. We're accepting responses to that survey until the 30th of this month. So please, if you have your phones handy, you should be able to go up there. But really, if you just look up, Humboldt Hcog RTP, you'll get to our site and you'll have access to that survey, and we'd really appreciate everybody filling that out and hearing what your transportation priorities are. And then lastly, I just want to, really extend myself. I would love to hear from you. One of the things, since I've come on that I'm really trying to get a better handle on is exactly what the business community needs related to transportation, and how it's impacting your businesses. Like I think about real estate, like, is it, does it matter like who wants to move here, or what neighborhoods are choosing to move to, that kind of stuff. I think it just comes out in so many different ways, and I'd love to hear more about that. Email's fine, but actually I do love talking on the phone. I just love connecting with people. So just give me a call, and I would love to have that one-on-one conversation and just hear more about it. And certainly if there's other groups you belong to that could benefit from just understanding a little bit more about what Hcog does, please be in touch. I'd love to, hit up Rotaries, anything like that. I think it's just good to get the word out about us. I think, a lot of people haven't heard of Hcog, and then people who have aren't really exactly sure what we do. This year, the big thing is regional transportation plan. Next year, there will be some other big plan we're working on. So there's kind of always something to talk about. And I think once we have a little bit better understanding in our community about what Hcog does, then it's easier to come and give the updates like, hey, you want to join this, or, I'll have a better handle on which groups really want to know about which topics. So yeah, with that, I just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of present and, kind of share the Hcog story. And yeah, I'd love to hear from all of you. Questions, like I said, happy to take that.
I have a couple of questions. Can you go back to that statistic on the pedestrian injuries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me.
What was the timeline of that?
Yeah, let me get there real quick. Oh.
Sure, take your time.
Yeah, so this was 2005 to 2019. Okay. I should say these are for the rankings on the screen are from the Office of Traffic Safety. So those are from 2018. That's the last year that they have reported. It takes them a really long time to compile. So that's from those ones, the 2005 to 2019, with the 38% of our local pedestrian fatalities being people of color. That is from the Coalition for Responsible Transportation Priorities. They've been working really hard to keep a list of pedestrian fatalities, and basically it's a program they have. It's kind of like just know their names, right? So they had a gathering at the courthouse maybe last month or the month before, where they read off it was just even in the last 10 years, and there were over 70 names, and it was pretty powerful to sit there and just hear name after name. And I think also surprising, like just the names, the big ones that made the news that we may know, and then also people that didn't even have names, like they still are just like, we don't name unknown, like, so it's just, really prominent folks in our community have been impacted by this, and sort of the least advantaged have. And so it really, it was a lot to listen to all those names, but they've been doing a great job just compiling those local statistics and helping make sure that people are aware of that.
So going back to that, have there, based on the number of fatalities that we have here locally with pedestrians, probably a lot on Broadway,
Yeah.
and the safety corridor. I know there's been hit and runs, or
Yeah.
not necessarily hit and run, but just pedestrian injuries. What kind of improvements have been made specifically to address some of these issues? And then secondary to that, you know, this crosswalks are awesome, and the lighted ones are fantastic, and I love them. But unfortunately, not enough people turn the light on when they want to cross the street. And then at the same time, we have a lot of drivers who just blow right through the lighted crosswalk. So I guess the twofold question is, you know, what's been done to handle some of these pedestrian injuries, but also what can we do as residents or city officials to make sure that the safety things that we have installed are working properly, you know, or being received properly? And is there like a public service campaign or something that we should be doing?
Yeah, those are great questions. So first of all, what's being done? I think everything takes an absurdly long time. So you know, what's being done on the safety corridor, Eureka Arcata, this Indianola undercrossing that HCAOG's been working on since 2001. Is scheduled for construction in 2022. So, you know, I mean, that's a really, I mean, and that's a big, complicated project. You know, the Bay Trail kind of spurred out of that. All these, you know, some great things have happened with that, but it just, you know, it just goes to show like, okay, we recognized a problem, you know, sometime before 2001 when the project sort of got like, okay, let's do this. And then 20 plus years later, we're still working on implementation. So I think that's really an extreme example, but just to say, like, you know, if people are feeling frustrated or angered, especially if a loved one or someone they care about has been hurt, like there's a reason they feel frustrated and angry, because it just takes too long. And so I think, you know, on Broadway, currently there are some, you know, Caltrans is focused, it's really, you know, their right of way on Broadway. So HCOG's participated in a plan just recently last year, the Broadway Multimodal plan, and that was in conjunction with HCOG, Caltrans, and the city of Eureka, looking at that, and then Caltrans is kind of taking it, you know, forward. And so what they have right now on South Broadway, the construction you see going on now is actually for ADA improvements. That's a whole different pot of money that they were able to just, you know, kind of get into. That's happening, and that's kind of the sidewalk infill you're seeing, the bumps at the intersections, that kind of stuff. They're doing all of that, making sure the driveways are accessible. Then they're coming back through with a safety plan, which they're working on right now, the design of that. So how do we get safe pedestrian access? Where do we need more sort of mid-block crossings, even though there's not a stoplight or businesses? Do pedestrians need a place to cross there? Looking at all of that, looking at, you know, how can we add bike facilities that are safe? So that is going on with Caltrans design, and they've assured us it's going to be a quick process and it's going to take 3 years. So that's what I'm talking about. Things take a really long time. So, you know, 3 years is quick when we know, I mean, I think just last week, a couple people died on Broadway. So, you know, it's really, you know, it just feels, you know, so when I hear the advocates, like, you know, kind of like, it's just taking too long. It is, but there's, you know, there's also real design that needs to happen. You know, real people are in a room somewhere making these things real. And so, you know, it's not just, you know, turnkey like that. So Mike, I see your hands up if you want to add.
All right. A lot of things are happening that people don't always see, because like you say, it takes 20 plus years to get something done or to get it programmed, and then you still have to do it once it's funded. And for projects like the safety corridor and a lot of the work that they did on 299 and the Highway 36 interchange is the reason that a project that was funded in 1999 was completed in 2015 or 16. And so that's one thing. But some of the stuff that has happened in Fortuna that I can remember is the bulb sidewalks downtown. Yes, they look garden and flower beds, but one of the primary benefits to those is it shortens the distance that people have to cross the street. So if you've got shoppers downtown, and instead of a 40 or so 42-foot cross, maybe now you've only got a 22-foot. And so for some people, that can be a big deal. For the seniors, people with a stroller, with toddlers that are holding on to their hand, things like that. We've also gone back and reprogrammed some of our walk designations on the traffic signals to the new standard to make sure that everything's compliant, which is why when people cross the street at Redwood Way and Fortuna Boulevard, it takes what some people think is an absurdly long amount of time, but again, people can safely make it across the street. And we have people that come all the way from St. Luke's or from over at the apartments over on Lonnie and 12th Street and have to cross at that intersection one way or the other. And that helps out with that. Since 2008, we've added probably 5 or 6, 8, I think it's 8 lighted crosswalks in Fortuna. We've done 3 HSIP, which is Highway Safety Improvement projects just in Fortuna. And we focus on that. That is one of the reasons why we're only ranked 79th instead of 19th or so. But we don't want to see our people getting injured, and people at Hcog don't want to see anybody injured. And I guarantee you that people in the other cities don't either. I know that Mayor Seaman in Eureka worked with the council and declared a traffic safety emergency because of the H&I Street corridor and the Broadway corridor and the 4th and 5th Street corridor. Now, the thing that a lot of those share is that they're all also shared right away with Caltrans, which brings us back to the amount of time sometimes it takes things to happen. But Caltrans has been very responsive to, especially to the Broadway area. And they are working hard on that. And they are actually moving ahead, shortening the amount of time it'll take to get that project implemented. And if I remember right, and Beth can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the portion between Herrick and Truesdale has already been recommended for funding. So that hurdle has already been crossed.
Yeah.
But we will see those improvements sooner rather than later. Still not going to happen fast because it's a state project, but a major portion of it that's hard to implement is already done. So those are just some things that have happened. And there's other things in the works. There's the project that she was speaking of on 12th Street, a similar one on Kenmar is much further along. And it actually helps that we have people that work at Caltrans that live in Fortuna. I mean, it's not like some of the people have nothing to do with programming projects, but they live in Fortuna. And they mention, it took me forever to get through that light at Kenmar and the Boulevard because of the amount of traffic down there tied up by the freeway. So, and we're looking to alleviate it. And in the 90s, I was watching people walk to work at the motels, the back of the house people, not the people at the front desk, but the people that clean the rooms, work in the restaurants and such as that, walk to work in the morning, in the rain, when it's dark. And we've been trying to fix that mess since then. And Merritt, our city manager, formerly the public works director, city engineer, has done a tremendous job working with folks to get it to where it's at today. And we can look forward to that being fixed and taken care of. And those same kind of projects are happening in Eureka, in Arcata, and such as that. So there are a lot of things going on, and it's an amazingly large problem. It takes a lot of things to fix. And there's a lot of people that are dedicated to seeing that it's done. And HCAOG is always involved in some way, writing letters of support, helping to find funding sources, coming alongside to get the project on Ronerville Road done with the sidewalks for Toddy Thomas and for Ambrosini School. Merritt had to go to the CTC and make the case that the funding money that they gave us in the 90s was no longer sufficient to complete the project. And according to Caltrans guidelines, it had to have sidewalks, it had to have ADA improvements, it had to take the school route in count. So the funding went from 700 and something thousand dollars to like 1.8 million. But we got it done, and it benefits the community, and it's a major safety project. So those are the things that happened just in Fortuna, with similar things happening in each city. So sorry I stole your thunder, Beth.
No problem. That's great. That is great. That's a good.
Okay, final call for questions before we let Beth go and everybody else. Looks like a silent group. Great. Thank you, Beth. This was a great presentation. I
Awesome.
learned a lot, even more than I thought I knew. So thank you for that. And the Clean California program, if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out to me or to Beth, and I'll get you in touch with Beth, or however it works.
Yep.
That's exciting. Yeah. So we'll have to hear more about that.
Okay, great. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed presenting, and yeah, glad to get the information out there.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
We
you.
will see you next Monday.
Thanks, guys.
Bye for now.